I'm Barry Gilreath, and this is Fabric of Family.
We came on a Sunday, one part of the Bible was backed up with the other part of the Bible.
The glory, revive us again.
Hi, I'm Barry Gilreath. Welcome to Fabric of Family. I don't know if you've ever had the unfortunate situation to arise where someone has broken into your home and taken your possessions. But those who have experienced that talk about how that it just makes them feel vulnerable and how that there's a feeling of uneasiness because someone, you see, has entered into their safe haven and taken things that belong to them. But you know, there is another type of theft that is taking place in homes today. And sometimes this theft takes place and it happens right under people's noses on a daily basis and seemingly they're unaware of what's going on. You see, the devil is a thief. And the devil is not so much concerned about our material possessions, but certainly he is our spiritual possessions. And so in today's program, the program topic is in the form of a question. Has the devil robbed your home? Stay with us and we'll continue with our discussion in just a moment.
Thank you for viewing The Fabric of Family. If you would like to receive free Bible study materials, please contact us. Our mailing address is 1031 Hermitage Drive in Florence, Alabama, 35630.
Never conceal my Savior and guide. He is a light.
Or you may contact us at our website, jhcc.org. That's jhcc.org. Or you can call us at 256-764-6291. That's 256-764-6291.
Mansions above, singing His praises, gladly I'm walking.
Our hope and prayer is to bring you and your family closer to God.
Well, it's time for our panel discussion. And I have some gentlemen with me who are going to be a part of this discussion today. Michael Clark is with us, and I've known Michael since he was just a little bitty baby.
Yeah.
His family and my family have been dear friends throughout the years, but now he's a gospel preacher himself, and he preaches for the Somerville Church of Christ, and this is in Somerville, Tennessee.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, good to be with you again. You know, we have known each other for years. I'm excited to be on the program with you. And I went through the Memphis School of Preaching 2015 to 2017, started working in Somerville, married to Megan Clark, and we have a little boy who just turned a year old. His name's Adam Shane Clark.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sitting beside you is a man by the name of Aaron Gallagher. Aaron, this is your first time to be on Fabric of Family, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome you and let you just tell those who are viewing the program today a little bit about you and what you're involved with.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've watched the program before, so it's nice to be on this side of the
right.
camera. So I now work at the Gospel Broadcasting Network. I do really a focus in social media, kind of outreach, evangelism, and public relations. So some of the new GBN work is towards Instagram, reaching out to people who aren't members of the church, trying to reach them with the gospel, and that's what I spend a majority of my time doing.
All right, if somebody wanted to follow you, what do they need to do?
Oh, on Instagram, you could just type the @ symbol and then The Authentic Christian.
All right. Yeah. I'm sure we'll have some who will pick that up and begin following you on that. We're talking about theft, but kind of from a unique perspective. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of having your home robbed or not. Either one of you?
Thankfully not.
Thankfully not?
I have, actually, I have.
Well, I imagine that's probably a very traumatic experience to go through.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you read in the Bible about how the thief comes, you don't know when the thief's going to come. And I remember it was on a Tuesday night, and I actually went with two of my friends to eat dinner. We were only gone for maybe an hour, and we came back, and the front door was ajar. I had a roommate at the time, so I texted him and said, hey, you know, did you leave the house unlocked? And he said, I haven't been home all day. And so it was a really eerie feeling. You walk through the front door, and you look around, you think maybe I didn't close the door, and then you look over and there's a closet that you never use that's pulled open, and all of a sudden it starts to realize that someone else that you don't know has been in your house. And they did take a lot of things, but other than the physical possessions, one of the things that I remember is, I remember I couldn't sleep for days. I remember sliding my couch in front of the door and sleeping with a baseball bat next to me, and it really was an invasive feeling.
Oh yeah, and you know, that's something that'll probably stick with you for the rest of your life. To go through an experience like that where someone takes possessions that don't belong to them and invade your private area. But you know, the devil himself, he's also a thief. He's identified as such in the Scripture. And so today in our program, I kind of want us to think about how the devil actually invades our home, how the devil actually steals from us. But I mean, is the devil, is he interested in our material possessions?
Absolutely. One of the things that is so interesting with the devil and Job is the devil believed that the one way to get Job to curse God and die was to take all of his material possessions. What the devil didn't understand there, though, was that it didn't matter to Job what material things he'd been given. He understood that the Lord was the one that gave him those blessings. But the devil thinks in such a mindset of, if I can take your stuff, the things that aren't eternal, then that will get you to abandon God. And that was the very thing he tried, and he even tried to take Paul's health. In 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about he was sent a messenger from Satan to buffet him, and yet he asked the Lord 3 times, take this away from me. The devil has put something towards me and in front of me that is trying to keep me from being a good Christian and a good apostle and follower, but he was told no. The devil thinks that if he can affect our lives, whether it's our health as a possession that we have or whether it's our wealth, those are 2 key areas he's going to try to attack to get us to deny Christ.
So ultimately then the devil is interested in our spiritual destruction, but what you're saying is that he can use and exploit these physical possessions that we have to bring about our demise.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, it reminds me of, like you said, he's after spiritual destruction for us. And when I look at kind of the parallels of Matthew 19 with the rich young ruler, that's the one thing that kept him. You know, that was he didn't want to part with his possessions. But then I look in Luke 19, I believe it is, and you've got Zacchaeus. And he says, I'll give anybody that I've cheated 4-fold. And Jesus says, you know, today salvation has come to this man's home. So with some of those things like money, it's a tool, you know. And if our love becomes that thing that binds us to it, then we won't want to use it for good. And so you look at those 2 stories, they kind of remind me of he can use it both ways.
Right.
So how does he ultimately plot and scheme against us in bringing about what could be considered a total loss for a family? What are some ways he does that?
Children dying. Children dying is one of the key things that he did to Job even. He tried to take Job's children, and there have been many people throughout history that have lost a child, and the number one question they ask is, how could God do this to me?
Right.
If the devil can make us believe that God has taken something from us, then we'll start to have this mindset cultivated in our own ideas and minds that says that God is not all good or not all powerful, because if He's all good, He wouldn't want me to suffer. If He's all powerful, then He would stop me from suffering. And if the devil can put that seed of doubt into anyone's mind, especially a non-Christian, they'll never want to even follow the Lord in the first place, because they'll always think that it was the Lord that took that from them.
That's a really good point. You know, one of the things you said in there that kind of spurred a thought is you talked about the seed of doubt. And, you know, you look all the way back to the Garden of Eden, how the devil's always worked. You know, he's always went after God's meaning, His motives. And if you look at how Satan went to Eve, she said, now, is that what did God say? And Eve, she gives it to you verbatim. And then he says, well, is that what God, you know, meant? God, you won't really die. And so you look all the way back, he's always tried to put that seed of doubt. So when we read, you know, like you said, you read the story of Job, and then you see that Satan has always, throughout the Bible, tried to cast that seed of doubt, like he just brought up so clearly.
So the loss of a child is certainly a traumatic loss that we can experience, and the devil has exploited individuals with that and brought about even their own spiritual destruction. What about the loss of material possessions?
Yes.
Such as, say, you know, our money, our wealth. You know, how many have fallen prey to spiritual destruction because they had an abundance of wealth one day, and then maybe the next day it was all gone. And rather than, you know, turning to God, they turn away from God.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you think about kind of Satan seems to always use different tools that God's given us and pushes you to different extremes. And you know, with money, you know, I really think that one of the problems in our culture today that the devil has kind of, he never comes at you directly and says, it's always a kind of a subtle way with like the devil and debt. I mean, I feel like a lot of families are torn apart because the devil says, materialistically, you're not content with what you have. You need this. You know, people that are in marketing, they do their job fantastically. They say, you need this to be happy. And what happens is a lot of times that debt, you know, boils up and it fills up, and the next thing you know, you're not able to give and you're not able to worship God the way you want, and that can really put a lot of tension in the home.
Yeah, one of the number one causes for divorce now is money problems. Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely, you know, I know Dave Ramsey is not necessarily a Christian, but he talks about there are 4 things you've got to have on the same page as a couple. You need to know what you believe religiously. You need to know what you're going to do about your in-laws. You need to know whether you want children or not. And he said, but the 4th one's probably one of the most important. You need to know about your finances. Because if one of those areas doesn't work, he said, these are the top 4 reasons that divorces happen, according to his statistics and his knowledge. So definitely money and debt, gambling, all of these things promise something, and that's exactly what the devil does. He promises you he's going to give you something, but he steals from you instead.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that the devil is busy and active and exploits these material blessings that we have been given, and can use that as a means whereby to separate us from the Lord. You know, another thing that I think about that the devil has been successful in stealing would be the Bible. And the reason I say that is because you think about how prevalent the Bible is today. I mean, you know, supposedly most every home has at least one copy. I mean, you go into a motel room and usually there's going to be a copy of the Bible there. I mean, you see it in the bookstore. It's everywhere, but you know, the Bible can be present physically but still be absent. And what are your thoughts about the devil stealing the Bible from our home? How does the devil do that?
Homework, ball practice, things that take precedent over the Lord and over the church. Anytime someone sacrifices worship to go to ball practice, or they say, well, we just couldn't get Johnny to church tonight, he's got to get a paper done. I grew up in a time where I was in public school and I had homework and I was expected to get it done too, but I was never under the impression that church would be sacrificed in order for me to get a worldly accomplishment, because again, what does it matter if I profit the whole world and I lose my soul? And so homework and ball practice is this simple thing that has truly destroyed a lot of family spirituality, because when you tell a child that they don't have to grow up and go to church, why are we so shocked when they grow up and leave the church completely?
Yeah, you know, as you were speaking, I thought about Luke 8:11 and 12. Now the parable is this: the seed is the word of God. Those by the wayside are the ones who hear, then the devil comes and takes away the word out of their hearts, lest they should believe and be saved. And he's using that parable with farming language. And I remember when I tried to plant grass seed once, it didn't grow very well. But I remember I got the seed thrower, and I threw a little bit of the seed out into the yard, and I thought, okay, well, and then I just kept throwing more and more. And that kind of in my mind gave me the idea of, you know, when you have a family, it's easy for Satan to snatch out a little bit of the word. You know, one of the things I learned back when I played sports was you cannot outwork a bad diet. And a lot of times I think Christians try to do that. They try to go to services, you know, Wednesday night, they'll go to Bible study, they'll go Sunday, they might go to Bible class, worship Sunday morning and Sunday evening, but the rest of the week, they just put trash in their ears with music and the things they watch on TV. And it's like, you go talk to anybody who's super physically fit, and you ask them if they eat junk food. You know, you can't work out once or twice a day, eat junk food all day, and expect to be healthy. It's the same way with our physical or our spiritual lives as well.
Right.
So if I understand what both of you are saying, you're saying that you know, the devil can take the Bible from our home. First of all, he can do it via the trash that we put in our minds as we go through a week, through music, through certain kinds of videos, through television, through the internet. That's one way. And then another way that the devil can get us to give up the Bible, and he takes the Bible out of the home, is through our priorities, and how that we might engage in something that in and of itself is is innocent, harmless, and can even be good, such as playing ball or doing homework. These are good things to do. But when we begin to shift our focus and our priority away from the Lord, and we substitute that with these external things, such as the homework or the ball or whatever, then the Bible is very subtly being taken out of the home.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The devil doesn't care if you're religious.
No.
So long as he has you Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
He'll let you go to church on Sunday and go on Wednesday night, but if he's got you doing all of his things throughout the week, he's not upset that you're going to church. Yeah. He's still got you.
Yeah, I listened to a sermon just a few days ago, and the preacher was talking about a woman he'd spoke to, and the elders at her congregation. The preacher said, I don't know if I would have done this or not, but the elders wrote a letter and emailed it to the congregation, and it was a letter from the devil. And it was talking about the people who came to services, but as soon as they left, they weren't living as Christians. Mm-hmm. And the wording that was, of course, created, but it was by the devil saying that he has an inside man. He's got somebody that the friends will meet and say, oh, this guy's a Christian. Mm-hmm. And they see the way that you live your life. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes you can go to services, but be a really bad advertisement for the gospel.
Well, excellent discussion today. We're going to continue our discussion in just a moment. We're going to watch a little segment called A Word for the Family. It's kind of a devotional segment here on Fabric of Family.
This is A Word for the Family, and I'm Jared Rhodes with the Olive Branch Church of Christ. As we think about the family today, I want you to consider all the different advice that goes around helping you to raise your children. It seems as though everybody has a different idea, and everybody wants to help you, but the facts are, in the end, I'm going to stand before God for how I raised my children. I have a daughter that's fixing to turn 3. Throughout that, I understand that I'm going through a time period right now called the terrible twos. I understand that there's times when it's difficult to be a parent, and so as I look to the world, I can see all different designs, all different ideas for how I should raise my children. And it interests me much as I consider the great task that God has laid upon me to raise children that will put Him first, that will love Him, that will ultimately have their fate for eternity decided by the actions that take place. As a parent, I have a huge responsibility to ensure that my child goes to heaven one day. So as I look at what the world tells me, I must consider what God tells me. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 19 it says, "For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God." The ideas that the world has really don't mean much unless it's what God says. I think back to Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 24 it says, "He who spares the rod," it says, "hates his son." And ultimately it goes on, it says, "But he who loves him disciplines him promptly," right away. They bring an end to that problem. Also in Proverbs chapter 23, in verse 24, it says, "You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell." I understand within the beating that takes place here, it's probably not what this world has interpreted or used the term beating as today, where I don't believe we're out to destroy them or endanger their life, but rather we are helping them. In Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 24, at the end it said to deliver them or to rescue them from hell. Within the world today, there are so many people that say, don't discipline your children. Just love your children until they ultimately make their own decisions. But within God's Word, He gives us a design, a way in which we are to raise our children. I think back to Acts chapter 5 and verse 29 when they said, we ought to obey God rather than man. But as I think of obeying God rather than man, I also understand that when it comes to training our children, I ought to believe the wisdom of God that is found in Proverbs rather than the wisdom that is found on the internet. Rather than the wisdom that the, quote, doctors teach us today of how to raise our children, I want to trust God. And as it says in Proverbs 23 and verse 24, I pray that through that, I can ultimately deliver that soul from hell. I encourage you, raise your family in a godly manner, and we can all rejoice one day together for eternity.
Well, thank you for being back with us for our discussion. I thought for this particular session we would start out, gentlemen, by thinking about some of the different rooms that are in a house. You know, when a thief breaks in, sometimes they don't usually clean you out. I mean, they don't usually pull up a U-Haul and when you get home there's nothing. Right. Usually they'll go into a particular room and get what they perceive are the valuables and then get out very quickly. Mm-hmm. As we use that kind of as the springboard, let's think about some of the rooms within a home and make some spiritual application about how the devil can steal from us in these rooms. You know, one room that we always find in a home is that of the kitchen. Mm-hmm. What do you associate spiritually with the kitchen? How does the devil steal from us through our, well, spiritual kitchen, if you will?
Definitely alcohol is one that comes to mind because I've never been in a kitchen that didn't have a fridge. Mm-hmm. And I don't know of many people who wouldn't store their alcohol in a fridge. And so as you think about alcohol from the perspective of, and what we're talking about here is the devil, when he comes in to steal, he wants your soul. He doesn't want the TV, he doesn't want the kitchen, he doesn't want the fridge, he wants your soul. And so alcohol is something the Bible tells me multiple places, Old Testament and New Testament, is something that the Lord detests. He doesn't want it to be a part of my life. It is a home wrecker, it is a killer, it is a destroyer. And there are a lot of homes today that are not better because of what's inside their fridge. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You know, there's something else that's in a kitchen as well, in addition to the refrigerator that comes to mind. And usually folks will have a trash can. Mm-hmm. You know, there are times when you need to take the trash out.
Right.
Right. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we're content to have all of that trash there, and we need to clean out some things in our lives. And when we don't do it, the devil's, he's having his way with our soul. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting you talk about the trash can. So many times we read something that has a spiritual application, and all you have to do is put it into a physical application, and then it makes complete sense. You talk about a trash can, you know. I mean, how long do you let your trash can is not something when it's full and overflowing. It's not even a conversation. It's, oh, I'm going to take it out. And yet spiritually, we'll have things in our lives, you know, for years that we never deal with. Yeah, I mean, you think also the kitchen brings to my mind just how thankful we should be for the food that we have. I mean, in America, we're so lucky. If you ever do mission work anywhere else in the world, you see what people have to eat. Mm-hmm. And you should, you know, as a family, whether it's a husband and wife or whether you have children, to just teach them to be thankful that everything we have is from God.
Right. Yeah. So there's the kitchen. What's another room?
Living room, family room, however you want to call it.
Okay. How could we apply that? How does the devil steal from the family room?
Television. That's a big one. A lot of living rooms I've been in have a television inside of them, and it doesn't even have to be something sinful that you're watching. You can spend too much time watching football, watching, you know, basketball, watching something that's not in and of itself sinful, but it's keeping your spiritual body from getting the type of spiritual study that it needs. And so there is something to be said about shutting the TV off from time to time and taking some efforts to study.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And now, you know, in 2018, it used to be a parent would just have to watch make sure the TV room is in the, you know, the TV's in the middle of the TV room, and they can check on the kids. And nowadays with the electronics, I mean, you've got a miniature TV, and if a parent allows kids to have electronics, you've got to do some research to put some parameters on there. I actually, when I lived in North Carolina, to make some extra money, drove Uber for a while. And I had a mom that I picked up once, and she was telling me this story about her kid. And her daughter had a cell phone app that was a calculator. And she said, "Mom, it's a calculator, it's for school." Well, it turns out the parents didn't do the due diligence, and it turned out that calculator app had 3 or 4 buttons. You could go a certain level, and it turned into a social networking app. And so the kids, they had developed, the developers had hidden it so that kids could have it. And parents, you know, we really have a responsibility to make sure the electronics we're allowing the kids to have, that we put the right parameters. So I would never want a kid to be an adult, look back and say, my first introduction to this was because my parents let me have electronics when I was 10.
Well, and we need to be proficient in technology.
Absolutely.
If the devil's going to attack us in that way, we don't need to be experts, but we need to be proficient enough that we could figure that out if we were to look at their phones.
Okay, so the family room, the kitchen, What about the bedroom? Would that not have some spiritual application as well, and how so?
Sure.
I mean, again, the books you may have in your bedroom may take you away from studying together. You and your wife need some time together to talk about biblical things and to have a spiritual time, just you and the wife, not even with the kids involved. And so if you're reading, a mystery novel all the time, the latest John Grisham book or whatever, and you're not ever studying the Bible together, again, you may not be reading a bad book, but what you're doing is bad.
Eric?
I remember my wife and I, when we were actually engaged, we had dinner with a coworker of mine, and he was telling us about him and his wife have been married for 50 years, and we asked them, what's one piece of advice? And they talked about spend quality time together. And they said that they, as much as they can, try to get up together and to go to bed together, because when they get up together and go to bed together, as much as they can, sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, but they're able to have that quality time where they talk about their day, what's going to happen in the day, what happened in the day earlier. And he said that was one piece of advice that my wife and I have tried to implement, and it's been really good, because if you don't set that quality time apart, sometimes life gets so busy and you can really kind of grow apart in that relationship.
Yeah. There's another aspect of the bedroom, obviously. The New Testament says that the bed is undefiled, but whoremongers God will judge. So it can also represent our purity and our faithfulness in our marriage relationship. And there have been many homes that have been destroyed because the devil has gotten a foothold in the bedroom.
Absolutely.
And so, that's something to think about as well. How is it that the Lord is robbed, and we're robbed, when Satan gets hold of our values and our priorities? How does he gain victory through that?
When my priority is not on the Lord, then my life is worthless. That's exactly what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
All the things I've tried, the only thing that really matters is to focus on God and keep His commandments. And so when I'm focused on anything other than God, I've been robbed.
How can we recover spiritual things that have been stolen from us? Because, when we've been robbed physically, we want to get our possessions back. What about spiritually?
Well, I've heard a little story about the best time to plant a shade tree is 30 years ago, and the second best time is right now. Start right now with your family. Purge out the bad stuff. If you've got to delete your Netflix account or whatever, and try to start putting in good things, good spiritual things, and growing spiritually.
Excellent thoughts. Appreciate both of you being with us today.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed our program today, and let me just mention this. From time to time, we want to remind our viewing audience that you're welcome to participate in this program. Let me tell you how to do that. Just reach out to us, contact us. There's going to be some contact information that's going to be provided, and you can write to us, you can call us, but if you'd like to make a suggestion about a program topic, we're always certainly interested in knowing what would be helpful for your family. There are a number of congregations and individuals who support this program each week, and they're going to be scrolling across the screen in just a moment. I'd like to invite you to visit with them or a Church of Christ in your area at your earliest convenience. Until next time, I'm Barry Gilreath Jr., wishing you and your family a wonderful week.